Take two.
Okay. Take two.
Here we go.
A basic survey of Judaism this Sunday and next Sunday. And let's go.
Go.
First of all, just a few historical basics about Judaism, our topic. Keep in mind that essentially we're talking about a 4,000-year history of faith, life, development, and so on. And essentially it tracks with the biblical historical record of experiences of people who identify as descendants of Abraham. So that's something like 2000 BCE. And you're all familiar with the terminology BCE as opposed to AD, BC. And the basic tenet, appropriately enough for our church, God made a covenant with the people chosen and responsible to demonstrate God's commandments and expectations for the rest of humanity. So, chosen / responsible. I mean, is that a choice you'd want to have made for, it's a challenge as well as a blessing, you might say. Importantly, of course, Jews understand that there was a historical Jesus. There was a guy named Jesus who did some stuff, but they don't view Jesus as divine. The Jews still await their Messiah. And at this point, we'll get through more details of the history, but Jewish communities and cultures, subcultures exist essentially on every continent. Well, not Antarctica.
Presbyterian scientists.
Yeah. I think Presbyterians have a foothold on one of those glaciers. So, defining Judaism. A lot of this stuff was for my benefit as well, because I haven't delved into it that much. I like this book, Basic Judaism by Steinberg. Essentially points out that Judaism has two distinct and equally legitimate meanings. First, a rich and full civilization. So meaning the actualities, things past and present of this historic group of people known as the Jewish people. And secondarily is the spiritual aspect of that civilization, the Jewish religion. And he identifies 7 strands of Judaism. Probably if you ask other people, they'd have other, kind of mindsets about Judaism, but I liked the way that he presented. So, Judaism is a doctrine concerning God, the universe, and humanity. Judaism is a morality for both the individual and the society. Judaism brings with it a regimen of rite, custom, tradition, ceremony. Judaism is a body of law encompassed in the Torah, the first 5 books of the Old Testament. Judaism is and involves a sacred literature and, I would say, reverence for writing and textuality in general. Additionally, Judaism is those institutions through which those first 5 are preserved and expressed and exist in the world. And 7, Judaism is the people, Israel, the central strand out of which and about which all of the rest is spun and has meaning. And note that, of course, some of the meanings and things above may kind of overlap and have similarities with other faith traditions, including our own. A lot of what we listed there, that might apply to groups like ours as well. So, Moses lived around 1200 BCE. crucial central figure in the identity and the meaning of Judaism. Moses, as we know, famously received the 10 Commandments. Both in the book of Exodus and Deuteronomy, they're expressed, credited with bringing the children of Israel out of bondage in Egypt that they had suffered under. And God renewed his covenant with his people, and the Jews agreed to serve God exclusively. So that, in sort of a nutshell, is a beginning for our purposes here today. God would bring them to the promised land and make them a great nation. Note that the Torah is subtitled or called the 5 books of Moses. Not that Moses wrote them, but Moses was sort of the receiver of them. So Moses is essentially the emancipator of a people and its lawgiver. So the Torah includes, I think we probably all recognize and know about this, the first 5 books of our Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The 5 books of Moses. And I've got a picture here to show. The picture on the left there, the guy there is a Holocaust survivor. Notice the familiar, the yellow star from the concentration camps, say Jew. So he is a concentration camp survivor in Mississippi, and the Mississippi synagogue was burned, but the Torah, the precious Torah that you see there, was saved from that fire. So that was just sort of a timely story I just happened to come across about this. So the Torah is greatly revered and essentially preserved and handled with great reverence and respect. You really don't touch it, you know, and so on. And for next week, I will have an actual Torah to bring and share that I bought for $5 at a thrift store. So stay tuned on that. So some Bible basics now. Probably some familiarity to us already, but so the Jewish Bible or Hebrew Bible or Tanakh is actually a set of books, essentially an anthology, a library, you know, sort of roughly equal to our Old Testament. And the most important being the Torah, the first 5, like we just mentioned. So we can look at it that the Jewish Bible is a subset of our Christian Bibles, or better said, probably we acknowledge their Bible and have 2 of it. So Moses lived around 1200 BCE. The Torah dates from about 800 BCE. So there's 400 years of who knows what, committees, and editing. I thought you had the latest draft and stuff, but what we have, we ended up, you know, for something that old, for us to have a book of such magnitude and scope is sort of miraculous in itself. The Torah may be understood and lived, by the way, both under conservative and liberal interpretations. So just like us Christians, different groups think different things based on their reading of the Bible. So, and I have a handout. Take one, pass it, maybe pass to the side, back.
The back row,
Yeah, we have
you have them too. We're on it.
Oh, man. I like this, oh.
Oh, yeah. This is about funeral services. No, you have this. No, I don't have this.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
you were defining gas card, you never got there.
Oh, we're getting there, don't worry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is insane. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
All right, so. Okay, everyone has the handout. It says Appendix 1, Appendix 2. This is kind of a nice visual that comes from this great book, Whose Bible Is It? A Short History of the Scriptures by Yaroslav Pelikan. And you can see there on the left, the Tanakh, Judaism, and Protestant Bibles. So that list on the left side of the page there gives you, quote, the Old Testament, gives you the Tanakh. And note that I've scribbled in there those first 5 at the top, Torah. So that gives you that perspective. Interestingly, with the strange centuries of church history involving Roman Catholicism and the Eastern Orthodox, traditions, their Old Testament has some differences in ordering and naming. You kind of just think, well, the Old Testament, the Bible, it's these books in this order. No, I mean, 2,000 years, stuff happens, right? I mean, stuff comes and goes. And then probably also familiar to us, and not an issue, of course, at all for the Jewish tradition. On the right there, you see the New Testament, pretty unproblematic by comparison. I mean, after all, it's only approaching 2,000 years old. So there you have that. I think that's a helpful reference point for you. So, I mean, it's fair to say that Jewish sects essentially range from what we would consider conservative, meaning roughly that the Torah is viewed as the actual word of God, given by God, taken as dictation, without error, an accurate account of everything about Jewish history, and then arranged to something more liberal, that the text comes from the interpretation of interaction with God and God's people, and is a record of that relationship. So a spectrum of textual interpretation analogous to various Christian interpretations of the Bible, because I think we all know that that's true of Christian Bible too, is that some of our Christian brothers and sisters have different sort of understandings of the status and meaning of the Bible. So it's probably fair to say that historically a conservative interpretation has prevailed, with the liberal interpretations becoming more prevalent in modern times. Okay, now we get to diaspora, our favorite word of the day. So, what does that mean? Well, it is tied greatly with Jewish history, for one thing, but there is a general meaning as well. Diaspora means the dispersion or spread of a people from their original homeland. Generic term. I mean, such things have happened, here and there in world history. And then specifically, the term diaspora by itself is a reference to the dispersion of the Jewish people beyond Israel in biblical times. So let's see.
Can you tell us which is which, the red or the black?
Yeah, let's look at this for a second, because I mean, there's so much here that we can't really delve into the specifics, but the concept is interesting, because with the Holy Land is a really desirable piece of real estate. So the Assyrians wanted it and invaded, conquered, whatever. The Babylonians, same thing. So the Jewish people had a hard time, staying and surviving and thriving, and so shift happens, right?
That's good, Dave.
So So check out, the black arrows are migrations. So it's people fleeing to try to find somewhere to live where they'll be left alone. The red is expulsions, meaning once the Jews get to a certain place, the existing population doesn't like these newcomers who are stealing all the resources and stuff like that. So the red are expulsions. So that's a huge part of Jewish history. And so, for example, you've got to and from Babylon. Here's Jerusalem, by the way, Holy Land right there. Migrations across Africa, circa 300 BC to 500 AD. So we're talking vast stretches of time, big trends, and so on. And then we've got up through Anatolia, 300 to 100 BC. And then you see here, 300 BC to 500 AD, and so on, working generally sort of westward, and then some eastward, and so on, including, importantly, migrations of large groups into the area we call Germany today, France, and from there, east to places like Poland, Lithuania, Russia, and so on. So that just gives you a sense of centuries and centuries of trying to settle and make a life, and with varying degrees of success, and then maybe moving on, and so on. So yeah, diaspora has been the status of Jews for, say, 2,500 plus years. So here again, reviewing that definition, that the diaspora is the dispersion or exile of the Jews outside of the land of Israel, with the history of expansive scattering of Israelites out of the homeland, settling in other parts of the world. And again, I mentioned the Assyrian, Babylonian. And so those folks, taken from Judah, from Judea, became known as the Jews. I mean, sort of a logical name. And it remained problematic to return to or to remain in Israel, even though that was an aspiration, of course, always. So this resulted in many various Jewish communities forming around the ancient world. So something that's pretty interesting to me, and we'll talk a little bit more about, is the Jewish languages in the diaspora. Because, of course, what happens when you move to a different country is they probably speak a different language there. And if you want to get along, as Jews typically do, well, you better figure out that language. And, what happens when languages come together, they, influence each other. And so, essentially, with 2,500 years in the diaspora, seeking to get along as a minority in host countries while sustaining their religious and cultural identity as Jews, you have many sort of language forms resulting accordingly. So there are around the world sort of Judeo-hyphen languages, such as Judeo-Persian, Judeo-Arabic, Judeo-Spanish. That was pretty prominent. It's a language called Judesmo, that's Spanish with Jewish, infusion. And then in the German-speaking lands, we have Yiddish, which is by far the biggest, most well-known and extensive Jewish language in the diaspora. The word Yiddish is basically German for Jewish. So, and today there are approximately 1 million Yiddish speakers. In the year 1900, that number was about 8 million. So what happened? The Holocaust. Yeah. Most of the victims of the Holocaust were Yiddish speakers. So Yiddish as a language, could have been wiped out, but it wasn't. So Yiddish speakers today are in the US, probably the most in the US right now, especially the Hasidic Jews in New York, New Jersey, and on average, as I understand it, those families tend to have an average of about 10 kids. So Jewish Yiddish language is not going to go away with that group in particular. And additionally, Yiddish speakers in Israel, Canada, Latin America, a lot in Argentina, for example. So anyway, there you have it. And so, wir lernen jetzt ein bisschen Yiddish. Ja?
Let's do it.
Kopier das Papier. A little bit of Yiddish, y'all? Yeah? Do you have it?
Yes.
Anyone not have? Okay.
Wait,
This is the thing with funny writing on
on the other side.
it. Okay,
Good, sure.
Dave, did you grab one, please? Very good. Thank you. Sure. Oh. So. Yeah, okay. 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 You good? Yeah. Okay. So, Shalom Aleichem, to which the response is, Aleichem Shalom. So again, Shalom Aleichem. Sehr fein. Was machst du? Was machst du? Repeat after me. Was machst du? So, it's, how are you? Literally, what are you doing? That's how they ask, how are you? Was machst du? What are you doing? To which the response is, well, fine. 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 Or nicht kosher. Nicht kosher. That means, okay. So, and let's see here.
David, as a German speaker, how close is this to German?
Pretty close, but noticeably different too. It's kind of cool because if you know German, you can learn it really easily or quickly because the vocabulary is predominantly German, except for a lot of like Slavic words, Hebrew, Aramaic words, and just other kind of turns of phrase. So anyway, let's see. What else? Let's say the days of the week. The back. Repeat after me. Sonntag. That's today. Montag. Dienstag. Mittwoch. That's the middle of the week. Mittwoch. Like German. German Mittwoch. Yep. Donnerstag. Freitag. Okay, Friday night is Sabbath Eve. So we call Friday night Erev Shabbos. And then Saturday, Shabbos. Yeah. Spanish, Sabado, right? Spanish has this Sabbath also. And then Saturday evening is Moitze Shabbos. And then Saturday night, Shabbos Nacht. Sabbath night. So good. So anyway, so take those along and read them over. It's kind of fun to just see something so alien or whatever, but kind of, you kind of make sense of it too. So, yeah.
When you're looking at the Hebrew letters,
Yeah.
do they read left to right or right to left?
Right to left.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, I don't know, you just read them. Yeah, no, right to left.
I'm saying, I mean, it is.
Opposite of
German.
Right.
Opposite of English.
Yeah. And it's funny dealing with Yiddish books because they're backwards. Check it out. Here's the back. This is not the front of the book, this is the back. The front. Die Katz der Piets von Dr. Seuss. Or as he's called in Yiddish, Schollenberger. So, you all know it, the cat in the hat? Das ist gewesen die Katz. Die Katz der Piets von Dr. Seuss. And es gießt noch Regen, es ist kalt und es ist nass, gesessen im Stuhl, geguckt auf der Gas. It's raining. Also ist Albert Zweig gesessen mit Ohren, glaubt, allebei wollte uns etwas geschehen. Mit Tor nicht Reus, sich spielen in Ball, gesessen in Stuhl, tut gar nicht beklau. So y'all probably remember from your youth. So anyway, kind of a fun thing. So, yeah, there you have a little Yiddish, and then we'll try a little more next week. I think that that's enough for today. Unless you want to stick around and chat, should we do some more Yiddish or?
Do you know anything about the development of the alphabet? Was it pictorial and then into figures?
Oh, I mean, whatever the history of the Hebrew alphabet is, it is the Hebrew alphabet, which is ancient. Then the Yiddish alphabet is essentially a modified form of the Hebrew alphabet. Sort of like if you think about English versus Spanish, where you have the little special characters and enye and accents and stuff like that. Yiddish is kind of the same way. So yeah, right there we're looking at the Hebrew alphabet. Hang on, I have a. I thought I had an image of the Yiddish alphabet. Well, maybe not, but basically what happens is you use certain letters. That's Aleph, and so for Yiddish, Aleph with a line underneath is A, and then with a little kind of doohickey, a line with a little cross through it, that's O. So that's how you write those vowels. And then there's Vov, just a there. Right? But that's long and yeah. There's both two of them. Yeah, two of those. One of those is a U. This ayin, that's what you use essentially for E. So basically, reading Yiddish is pretty friendly because it is an alphabet where you can sound things out. Whereas, Hebrew's wicked because, it's just a consonant cluster and you have to fill in the rest. Yeah, so anyway, so that's a lot of fun to mess around with that.
I didn't realize how close the German and the Yiddish are.
Right.
Very close.
Yeah, just
Zontig, Zontag. It's just
exactly.
one vowel different.
Exactly, and especially if you are familiar at all with German dialects, there's a lot of German dialects that have exactly, that are what Yiddishes. Like, for example, the word for weed, wir, W-I-R. Well, in Southwest German dialect, which is where I live, they say mir, not wir. And Yiddish is mir. So Yiddish has just picked up German of the Southwest dialect, which it makes sense because the original Yiddish speakers, people were coming up from French-speaking areas to Southwest Germany, Rhine, Main, rivers area, Southwest. Yeah, so it's not surprising that they basically picked up the German dialect of that area. And that's true of all the sort of Judeo-hyphen languages, is essentially they're based on living and interacting in those language areas, so Judeo-French and Judeo-Spanish and so on. And it's just Yiddish that's the one, because Yiddish had millions and millions of speakers, including people who migrated eastward into Slavic-speaking regions. And so, so it's not surprising that that language really lives on and had a huge speakership, and really also a unique composition because it has some French words, it's based on German, plus it picks up a whole lot of Slavic. So if you had a little Russian and you're going along in Yiddish, and it's like the word večer means evening, and it's Russian večer. So it's like, oh, I know that, it's evening. So pretty interesting. So yeah, so it's kind of a sense of a nomadic people moving over land areas, amassing different cultural stuff as they go, so it's pretty interesting to learn about that and to sort of understand this faith tradition that is both different from ours, but also tied directly to ours. So yeah. So next week, more of that, yeah, John.
Do you have any idea when the Jews kind of, I'm not thinking took over New York, but financially, but it just amazes me when I was a kid in the 60s, New York, it just seemed like almost everybody that had anything to do with money would have had a reputation.
I don't know.
I was just amazed at how smart the Jews were for getting material things.
I think I've heard statistically, or like kind of scientifically, that the Jewish people test as the highest intelligence level, where that kind of problematic, that kind of testing, but yeah, they have basically a history of success in settling into an area and getting along and figuring stuff out. That's what they do. And so, New York is no different. And
it was just amazing to me.
Yeah, and
to hear what they had done.
Right, and with the immigration, to the U.S. and sort of especially the late 19th century, early 20th century, millions of Jewish people coming, and landing in New York City a lot, Ellis Island, a lot of them, and a lot then just finding community immediately right there where they got off the boat and stayed in that area. So so I think the Northeast in particular was and is heavily Jewish, and then places like Montreal, Toronto, I think pretty heavily Jewish. There's a pretty strong minority of the people. So anyway, and a few of them keep up with the Yiddish, but most Jewish people I've known lately don't really know Yiddish. I mean, like I have a group that I read Yiddish with, and they're all Jewish, but I mean they struggle just like I do. So yeah, Tori.
I won't be here next week while I'm traveling, so I wanted to ask regarding Yiddish if you will cover the word verklempt. I'm told by a our Jewish friend that it conveys a depth of emotion that is difficult to translate.
It's very cleansed. Very cleansed. Yeah. Oh. I mean, well, what you're saying, it's about what I.
Yeah, it's like a deep all-encompassing sadness, I think,
Yeah.
is the closest you could get to it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'll look and see if there's
Okay.
anything more to say than that. No, okay.
Being a retired guidance counselor, I love you.
Exactly, okay, very good. Alright. Well,
It's a good word.
It's great.
well, so maybe that's enough for today, we should
Okay,
think
all right.
about heading over to church and we'll have more next week. And so, until then, sei gesund. So to say goodbye, you say be healthy, sei gesund. So be healthy until next week.
Sei gesund.
I don't think so.
Like I said.